Hi, everybody. Welcome to Rooted. I'm your host, Melissa Kroonenberg, co-founder and sole owner of New Roots Therapy. This month, we're focusing on the power of therapy, and to join me today is my very good friend, Melissa Lee, to talk to us about her experiences navigating therapy in her family and how that has transformed her life and the lives of her loved ones. Hey, Melissa, thank you so much for being here. I am so thrilled to have you with me.
I'm excited to be here.
Amazing. Today, we're going to be talking about the power of therapy. I mean, that's the theme for this month. And I am so glad that you decided to join us to talk about your experience with your family in the journey to discovering that your family maybe even needed some help, and what that process was like for you, and how maybe it's transformed things for your family. Why don't you start by telling us a little bit about, the story? Just give us a little bit of information on how you came to know that therapy was something that maybe your family could benefit from.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a mom of three. We are a blended family. So I have two biological children and one stepchild. So just even rewinding a little bit back, 10 plus years to when I was married to my first husband and had my daughter. And then, that marriage stopped,
Dissolved, yeah.
dissolved, and eventually, within a few years, met somebody else and decided to move in and be a family with them. It was just four of us to start. It was my daughter and my partner's son. So even that was a big transition. Both of the kids were young-ish, but still just understanding that it was a lot of change for all of us. I made the move from Durham into Northumberland, so geographically it was a move for my daughter and I, but also just a change of life, essentially, because we were now living with somebody who wasn't dad, and we were living in a different town, and everything was new. So new schools, new daycares, new friends. So, even inside of that, I just felt like there were a lot of things that my young daughter she was experiencing, and she was going.
Navigating.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was, as a mom, watching her navigate through them and watching my stepson navigate through them. I mean, parenting is really tough, and sometimes we want to have all the answers, but we don't.
Yeah. I mean, the process of blending families is just so challenging. I mean, it's hard even for the nuclear family, but I think an even, more prevalent challenge that families are facing is the blending situation, where you are essentially taking two lives, two different families, and sort of like amalgamating them into this new family. And there's so many different dynamics and so many different pieces to think about related to that process.
Yeah, I agree. And again, there's so much on my mind when these things happen, right? I'm worried about me and how I'm handling the situation, but I'm also really worried about the kids in the house, my daughter, my stepson. Eventually we had another baby that came along, and you're always just worried about, like, how is everybody, cohabitating? How is everybody doing together? How are they doing at school? How are they doing? So it's not just worrying about yourself and your own mental health. It's worrying and being, I guess, like, forward thinking into, like, what my kids are going to be navigating as they get older and they go through school and socials and sports, and, like, how can I give them the right tools to succeed going through, I mean, childhood and young adulthood. And
Right, and give them what they need to fully thrive, right?
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. And so how did you come to decide that maybe therapy was the right option for your family? Like what kind of led up to that, or what were you thinking?
Yeah, so I mean, being transparent, two of my kids are well, one, my stepson is on the spectrum, but my daughter also has some different diagnosis, and um, just understanding that social, like friendships and social settings at school can be a little bit difficult for kids who maybe don't have a full understanding or kind of see things differently.
Mm-hmm.
So just wanting to make sure that they're being given the right tools and the right guidance on how to navigate different social settings, I guess.
Right. I mean, is there something like in particular that you were seeing that started feeling really concerning, that was like, okay, as a mom, I feel like, there are certain things I can navigate, but now it feels like it's kind of like getting into deep water, or like, or was it just like, I just thought maybe it could be a good resource? Like what?
Yeah, I think that might be it. Like again, I think I'm always kind of forward thinking. So there wasn't really anything that came up that said to me like, "Oh boy, like, now we got to do something." It was like, I understand and I remember being a kid that like things are tough. And I mean, I grew up in the 80s and 90s. There were no cell phones, there weren't computers and social media, and so I know that like I struggled a little bit getting into like teenager and middle school and high school, like trying to navigate different friendships and situations I was put in, and maybe not always feeling like I had a safe person to really vent to or talk to. So for my kids, like just, my daughter would, she was young when I separated from her dad. So she would always ask me questions like, why don't we live with dad anymore? Or why? And I mean, I'm trying to give my best answer, but I don't know. So I
Right. Like it's hard
just,
to know like how that's landing, or like where are they sitting with this really, or
yeah, and
yeah.
I mean, she was so young, and even when these questions started coming up, I mean, she was under 10, so you don't really want to, like, I want to level with her and I want to give her all the information and I want to be transparent, but also just knowing how to talk to kids in something that is age appropriate and helping them understand without, like, I don't want her to feel like she's to blame. I don't want her to think, I mean, I don't know, but I just trust that the right therapist can, again, give my kids the tools and the right language and the right understanding of what they're seeing, what they're feeling, what they're going through every day or day to day.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I can relate, like even with my own kids, right? And my oldest son is neurodiverse, and we've had our own challenges that way, and wanting to make sure, yeah, like as a therapist, I feel this extra layer of pressure, like, oh, I should know exactly how to deal with every situation at any given time. And the truth is that
Mhm.
I don't. Like it, like it's complicated being a mom. It's really hard, and being in the thick of it, it's like I'm not even always sure that I can give it the perspective that it deserves, or give them maybe even the patience and understanding that they need to move forward in some different areas.
Yeah, I agree. And again, like, being a mom, being a dad, it's hard work. Like, I never ever imagined how hard and overwhelming but rewarding this journey would be. But, and I'm again completely transparent, it's hard to, watch your kids grow up and trust that we're doing the right things and saying the right things. So, knowing that my two children have an adult that is trusted um,
Knowledgeable.
and knowledgeable and a safe space for them to go. If it's not me, then they have somebody.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, obviously, whenever we decide as parents that maybe something could be good for our kids, it's hard to know exactly how to approach that with them. I'm curious about how you broached the idea with your kids about therapy, and were they receptive, or, how did you navigate that conversation?
Yeah, so again, like I think we started therapy pretty young with my kids. They might have been around 10 when they started going. So it was understanding that every kid and every person isn't the same. And I've had these conversations with my daughter. Um, she is energetic and she is sometimes loud and excitable, and she can sometimes be too much for people, and so can I as an adult. Sometimes I can be loud and excited and happy, and like I can be too much for people. But and so it was trying to get her to understand that like she doesn't need to change who she is, that not everybody's going to love her, not everybody's going to like her, not everybody's going to be her friend, but that's okay. And then going into the therapy side of that is just like having somebody else basically say the same thing, that like you are who you are and that's okay. And because I don't have all the answers, and I trust that they can go somewhere where someone's giving them tools and giving them guidance and giving them like different things to help navigate through these different social situations. And again, like I don't have all the answers. I'm not the therapist. And I think another thing that I should probably bring forward is that my husband works for Bell. We have unlimited mental health support, like unlimited budget. That is something wonderful that Bell offers. So if it's something that we have access to and it's not going to, I mean, it's covered by benefits, why not take advantage of
Right.
having somebody, again, who is a safe person, who I trust, who my kids trust, to talk through different situations and different challenges and different things that are maybe on their mind that they're not comfortable to say to me. I think it's always a little bit of hesitancy going into it because it's just so unknown. Like, you don't know who this person is. You don't know, especially when we first started therapy, it was like, what is this? They didn't even know what to expect. So, there's always a little bit of a learning curve there, and understanding that, this is something that you do. And I mean, is it once a week? Is it once a month? Like, kind of, I guess just gauging it by, what's going on at home and what we're seeing as parents. But eventually, finding somebody that you click with and that you feel like you can talk with, and me as a parent trusting that they're getting good feedback and
Good support.
absolutely, yeah.
Right. And so how did you know you had that? Like, was it like feedback you were getting from the kids, or was it?
Yeah, and I can see like sometimes with the person my daughter sees now, like she writes her kind of like little notes or like roadmaps about, tools or strategies or something she's given her if she's in a certain situation. Here's what you can do if you're feeling overwhelmed, or here's some things you can do when you're feeling out of place. Or so to see those little notes, like it's sweet, and it's really nice to know that she's taking in what's being offered and kind of like said to her, and actually like trying to put those strategies into real life.
Action.
Just, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, into action.
Yeah.
Yeah. And does your daughter use them? Like, has she found them helpful?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what kind of difference has that made to your family? Like, I'm just curious about the impact to the family in terms of like, because sometimes we can think it's like this individual thing where it's just about me, or, like it's an individual thing. It's, but when really I have found in my experience that when one person is caring for their mental health, it's far reaching. It's not just like beneficial for them, but you can sort of feel the impact on the whole family system. Did you have that experience?
Oh, absolutely. Our house can be chaos on the best of days. As I said, I have three, I mean, young-ish kids. They're all getting older, but during the school year, like we are just always on the go. We are always going somewhere or late for going somewhere. But I mean, just living together as a group of five and understanding that we all have kind of different backgrounds and we're still navigating this whole blended family even after 10 years. You're absolutely right. If one person is in a bad mood that day, everybody is going to feel it. So if, you wake up, if my stepson wakes up and he's maybe just not feeling and there's something going on, or what can we do to really draw on his time with his therapist to like what kind of tools, what kind of strategies has he been given to work through whatever is bothering him or whatever has come up on his mind that day, to kind of turn that day around, because you can't let one person kind of take charge and set the mood for the house or set the mood for the group or whatever. You really want to, again, just be able to kind of like turn it around and
yeah, find ways to navigate that feel more positive and like unite the family as opposed to kind of dividing the family. And it sounds like, if I'm hearing you correctly, that some of the strategies that the therapist of your children has provided have really been supportive of that.
Yeah, and I think it just helps them grow and kind of nourish these better, deeper relationships with siblings and us as parents and friends, and also just understanding boundaries and having like healthy relationships, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, all of those things, it sounds like, have sort of like this impact on the family as a whole, but in their extended relationships as well, insofar as like their relationships at school and other people, it's just sort of like far reaching.
Yeah, absolutely.
Incredible. So I know, especially like being a parent myself, and maybe being a therapist even adds extra onto that. But when I think about sending my kids to therapy or even sharing that with somebody else, I have this experience of fear that I'm going to be judged, that either my kids are going to be judged or I'm going to be judged as a parent.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I'm curious if you ever felt that way, and if so, how you navigated that.
Yeah, my kids have asked me like, why do I go to therapy? And I just say, it's because growing up is hard. I want to be transparent with them. I don't want to sugarcoat it. I don't want to tell them that it's impossible, because it's not. But just knowing that you're going to be in a lot of different situations and be put into these social settings where maybe you're not sure how to navigate. And me as mom, maybe you don't think that I know how to navigate them either. So I've always just kept it very like casual with my kids, and just kind of, you're just going to talk with somebody and just, I guess just keeping it casual. My kids have never really second guessed it. Like, again, in the beginning, I think it was a little bit new and unknown for them, but once they find a therapist that they click with, they look forward to going and talking with them and spending that hour, it's almost like catching up with a safe adult, I guess, is sometimes how I feel it is. And, talking about what we've done over the last couple weeks since they've been to see them.
And so have you ever worried that people would judge your kids or you for the fact that they go to therapy? Or?
I haven't, but I have had family members who have questioned it. And I think maybe they have that old school thinking that like you only go to therapy when something is wrong, or you only go to therapy because something has happened. So they'll say, why does she go, or why does he go? And just because I want them to have a connection or a relationship with somebody who can guide them in the right direction.
Right.
And if that's not me, then it's someone that I trust.
Right. Because I mean, you're not saying like they can't come to me, and I'm not here to help support my children because I know you and I know that you are. It's more like, in addition to me, like if I can give them the extra resource, why wouldn't I?
Yeah, and again, like still staying in contact with their therapists.
Right.
So understanding what's going on and being looped in with different strategies and different things that they're being showed how to cope and work through these different social settings. So not only they have the tools and tricks, but like I do as well. So I can support them at home with the same information or with like similar information, I guess. Because sometimes the things that you learn in therapy, like it's like practice. You can't just go there, for an hour once every 4 weeks and think that talking about something once is gonna it doesn't like sink in that quickly. You really have to like keep it kind of top of mind and keep these strategies top of mind and like practice them, I guess.
Right.
So having an understanding of what your kids are talking about in therapy or what they're talking about with their therapist or even just how things are going, it helps me to talk with them as well. But you're right, like I want my kids to come to me when there's things bothering them, and I want my kids to feel comfortable enough that they're not going to get in trouble if they tell me something or they're not going to be judged. But if they really have something that they just are afraid to tell me or their dad or their stepdad or whoever it is, then they still have somebody that they can talk to that hopefully is unbiased and non-judgmental and welcoming of the information and but again, a safe adult.
Someone that can point them in the right direction.
Yeah.
And help support them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think what I'm pulling away from this too is that it's a real collaborative effort. It's not like you're sending your child off and you're saying to the therapist, like, fix my kid, there's something wrong with it. But it's like, it really does work. And and as a couple and family therapist, like, this has always been my sort of perspective, is that it works best when the whole family is involved in what is helpful or supportive to the child in a way that honors obviously the privacy of the child, so they know that they have that safe space, but that you're also collaborating together in the interest of what is best for the child that's participating. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, childhood is difficult. That's a thing. And, parenting is also really challenging. And over the course of time, so much has changed, not just with what kids have to contend with, but also what parents have to contend with, and also the culture or the idea of therapy in general. And, where there was once this idea, or maybe there are still ideas about therapy being this thing where you're just sending your kid off to somebody else to deal with their problems, or it means some deficit in my parenting if I access support for my child. Attitudes are changing these days towards something different, where it's like, can I take, the 200-yard view at what's happening with my child and, recognize where I can show up for them and support them and hold them, and where I can't, and where I'm maybe limited, and can I have the strength or the courage to access whatever supports I might need or they might need in order to help them, and not just for them, but for us as a family.
I agree. To your point, things are different. Social media, the internet, it's a lot to navigate as an adult.
Yeah.
It's more to navigate as a child, I think. So
for sure.
Again, just understanding that my kids see therapists. It's a regular thing in our household. There's no stigma. Um, it's just kind of like a health checkup, I guess, is the way that I see it. Is just being tied in with understanding what's going on in their therapy sessions. It's private, but still having a bit of a pulse on how they're doing, checking in with the therapist, um, and and just trying to be transparent in where we all are in our mental health journey, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like how physical exercise has been so emphasized for kids
Mm-hmm.
as, helpful and important aspects of overall health. Mental health is now also starting to get recognized as part of the equation because we can't separate like emotional and physical health. They really go
I
together.
was gonna say, I think they're tied hand in hand. Like,
Yeah, they really are.
yeah, when your mood is not the best or when you're really feeling out of sorts, like it affects more than just yourself. It can affect you physically. You would attest to that. And
Absolutely.
yeah, I think it's just another piece of the puzzle in making, life more enjoyable and life more manageable, I guess.
I would agree 100%. I don't think you can separate what happens emotionally from what happens physically. I feel like they are deeply intertwined.
Mm-hmm.
And when you feel better emotionally, you can make better choices physically. And when you feel physically good, you feel better mentally. I mean, I think they go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I find it so interesting because I think that like times are changing so quickly. And I know my parents, like I find myself saying to my kids, like, maybe in a different way, but things similar to what I heard my parents saying to me, which reflect like the shifts in generation over time. And the things that my parents had to contend with me
Mm-hmm.
are so very different from the things that I have to contend with my kids. And I always say, like, with our parents' generation, we were, maybe around the dinner table calling our parents, like racist or homophobic. And now I feel like my kids are going to sit around the table and say something like, oh my God, you're such a monogamist, because like everyone's moving into different, which is totally different from how I was raised, but that's how the times are moving. And I find myself sometimes like my head spinning trying to keep up with all of the shifts that are happening with my kids. And I find it so important to sort of stay on top of that as well, just so that, we're not too far apart. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. I don't want to come across as judgmental to my kids.
Right.
I don't want them to think that mom is like really stuck up or like really set in her ways and very rigid, because I don't want them to be afraid to say something to me because they're like, well, mom doesn't believe in that, or mom doesn't like understand that, or
Right. Or to come to me with those aspects, like, like I'm online and I'm talking to this guy, but she won't understand because that's not like really where she's, that's not my mom's generation kind of thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I always find sometimes when my kids, I can tell that like something's on their mind, or they're kind of like skirting around an issue, and I'm like, you really have to kind of take a step back. For me personally, I have to take a step back, and I almost want that knee jerk reaction, like maybe I am a little bit judgy, or maybe I don't want to be. So what I try to do is really just like, okay, let's like take a step back here and
Deep
really think
breath.
about how I'm going to respond to this.
Right.
Because if I were, not that I respond wrong, but if I respond in a way that maybe discourages them from coming to talk to me, or discourages them from thinking that like,
I can relate
yes,
or get or understand their experience.
yes,
Right.
yeah. So sometimes I really do just have to like slow it down and kind of watch where I'm coming from, I guess, because I don't want to be like the old mom who doesn't get it, because I'm not cool.
Yes.
I want them to trust or to understand that whatever is going on or
Yeah,
whatever they're going through, that I can, if I can't relate, that I'll at least still be like accepting of it, or like
try to understand.
yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone, for tuning into another episode of Rooted. For those of you that have any questions or comments for us, please feel free to reach out. I want to thank our special guest, Melissa Lee, for being so courageous and candid with us today, for being an amazing mother and a wonderful friend. If you want to reach out to Melissa, you can reach her at melissaleerealty.ca. See you at the next episode.